We are live from Philadelphia today in the Independence National Historical Park, and we are waiting for our guest today who's going to be talking to us about sea turtles, marine life, and all the science that we need to know on how to improve our conservation efforts. There we go. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm going to move just a little bit closer so I can hear you a little bit louder. Can you see okay? I'm looking dark on my own screen.
I think you're fine. I think you were earlier a little bit less dark, but I don't know. I think it's because you're in a half shade, so that means your phone is probably lighting up your
Yes,
shoulder.
I think that's fine. Wait here. Let's try this. Maybe that will help a little bit. Well, great. Well, we are so excited to have you with us today. I am actually here in Philadelphia. So we are, in fact, in our Independence Historical National Park. So there's some symbolism in being here today, which is exciting and certainly happenstance, but nonetheless, we want to make sure that we are broadcasting straight from here. But we are excited to get to know you a little bit better and to learn about your work. And so I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to you and let you get started. Tell us about you, tell us about your research and what you're excited about.
Yeah, so I'm a marine conservation biologist, and my specialty are marine turtles. So for the past 13 years, I've been studying marine turtles, especially in Central America, but they happen to be a highly migratory animal. So that means my research is usually spanning more than just one country, a lot of international waters and other things. And yeah, I guess my mission is to protect these animals. And in the course of, I have just noticed that in order to protect them, I also need to talk to us humans about how we treat our oceans. And my sea turtles have actually been proven to be great ocean ambassadors. So people love sea turtles, and they stand, pretty much in place for a lot of other species that also need the ocean to survive. And ultimately, we as humans as well. So for some reason, there's a big disconnect between the human race and our oceans. And we tend to forget that it is our lifeline, that every second breath that we take is produced by our oceans. And yeah, so this is pretty much what I'm doing in my everyday life, I guess, just kind of a short version of it.
What I like so much about the way that you approach this is something that my colleagues and I have been rather passionate about. And that is that as scientists, we gravitate towards other scientists. We get excited about publishing in journals. We travel around the country and around the world, sharing our information with other scientists. And then we remember that that means it's not getting to where it needs to, which of course is to share that information with everyone. And not everybody's an expert. I am not an expert in your work. And so we have to have those translators. We have to have that information clarified in ways that is somewhat different than the way that we talk to other scientists. So I'm thrilled to hear that that is a passion of yours as well, and a recognition that we have to focus on. So tell us a little bit about the specific research and what you've done over these last 13 years, because there's a lot of history there as well.
Yes, there has been. So I'm originally from Germany, as you might be able to tell from my accent, and I moved in my early 20s to Costa Rica, where I worked mainly in population monitoring projects and conservation projects. So that meant we were trying to find nesting mothers and protect them and their eggs from human consumption. So we have a lot of poaching going on still in Central America, where people eat the meat of sea turtles and also their eggs. So what I did mainly was pretty much to patrol every night, dressed up like a ninja, and yeah, try to keep my mommies and the babies safe and their eggs. And in that turn, also we were trying to figure out how big our populations are, how much are they growing or shrinking, unfortunately as well, per year. And we were always trying to raise the amount of babies that we're producing in order to restore populations. And I did that for the better part of 8 years, where I was tucked away in the middle of nowhere, usually without internet, without a lot of contact to the outside world other than volunteers that came from other countries that visited me in my project, which was really incredible now that I come to appreciate it. It was a lot of young people between, I would say, majority between 18 and 25 that just, wanted to get out of their home country and wanted to see something else, but also wanted to give back. And I think that is something that has been resonating with me as well, because I have always felt it's almost like reparation payments that I'm making on behalf of the human race. We've messed up a lot of stuff. So there's some people that just need to pick up the slack. And I feel that, if at least I'm one of them. I'm definitely not the only one, but this urgency that I've always felt to kind of give something back. But after a few years, I just felt that, being tucked away somewhere in the middle of nowhere is just not how I probably would change the world and make it better for my animals. I would just, pretty much put a band-aid on the bigger issues. That's how I felt. I mean, of course, I could feel bad or good about, how many nests I protected, how many animals I protected, but I think the systemic issues and the cultural problems, that are lying underneath, I was not able to tackle in the manner that I was or wanted to. I mean, I talked to the kids of the, for example, communities that were still consuming turtles, and I could see how over the years of 8 years when these kids grew up, that there was a change in mentality. But I know that there's so many more countries and so many more communities that I was not able to reach. And that was pretty much the point in my life where I decided, okay, how can I increase my impact? And I decided to go back to school. So I had my master's when I went to Costa Rica, and I decided that I will go for my PhD after all. To first of all, as a woman in science, it's unfortunately still the case that you need to work a little bit harder than your male colleagues for certain things. And yeah, I just wanted to have the title to pretty much get the respect that I felt that I needed to get the impact. And also yeah, I felt that maybe with a PhD title I would be a little bit more autonomous as well, because I felt a lot of times I was very depending on other structures to do my work, and I just wanted to do my own thing. So yeah, lo and behold, I went back. I started my PhD at Texas A&M University in marine biology, and I'm about to finish, hopefully this fall, soon to be Dr. Figener. Yeah, and things have just turned out to be quite different though, because I went back to school for that, and then the very first field season that I was back in Costa Rica, I found a turtle that a lot of other turtles that I found before, but this particular turtle had a straw stuck in its nose. And I had the chance to film the whole procedure where my research team was able to extract it, and this just threw me into a totally different yeah, I don't know, a different life almost. It's incredible because I'm a scientist, and I became this accidental storyteller that all of a sudden, was able to speak up about all the things that she had witnessed over the years, that, harmed, that harmed the turtles, but also harmed the ocean environment. And yeah, over the past 4 years almost now, I have pretty much been given this incredible platform to just, yeah, advocate for our oceans and for my marine turtles with that, and try to reconnect people again to the oceans and the importance that the ocean has for our survival as well.
Connection. Oh, we're back. We had a glitch. Do you see us okay? I think we paused for a moment. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear
okay,
you.
Good. Sorry. Well, you've had an incredible moment. I mean, this is one of those. I was going to say 15 seconds of stardom, but I suspect, having now spent a little bit of time talking with you, it's really the turtle that was the star of the show for you.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, that turtle's now the poster child of something much bigger. And honestly, I wasn't even in the center of all of it. I mean, of course, I'm the one that owns the video, so I got to talk to a lot of, incredible people and got involved in a lot of movements and campaigns through that. But I wasn't really tossed onto the stage up until last year, where, it was also a little bit reluctant from my part because I think I'm still the most comfortable, somewhere tucked away in the jungle
Yeah.
than in the spotlight of so much attention.
Yeah, it's a challenge, but it sounds like one that you're willing to take on. I have a very similar mentality, and I often say I can be on stage, I can speak, but I am a lab rat at the end of the day. I like to be in my t-shirt, jeans, and behind the scenes. However, that doesn't get the message out. So we have to think forward. So to your point of how do you go beyond the single impact to a more gestalt, right? To a more whole scale impact, where I understand the turtles can be that ambassador. I recently met with the Carolina Raptor Center. They also use their animals as ambassadors, and so this is a concept that I'm starting to hear quite often. And the question to you would be, as you've made these international trips and as you've looked at the whole system, and I know you study beyond turtles into the full ecosystem of marine life, what are some of the things that you would say we need to focus on, not just looking at today, right? The removal of single-use plastics is a very tangible, very immediate kind of concept, but there's a whole lot more to consider. So where does your mind go when you start thinking at that more holistic level?
Well, I mean, holistically, I think, carbon emissions are definitely one of the big things. So our reliance on fossil fuels and actually plastics just fit into that perfectly because plastics, for those that don't know, are made from fossil fuels as well, petroleum. And so we need to really see how, and that's also something that everybody can do is, to check their own carbon emission, but we also need to hold pretty much the company's responsible pretty much. That's what it boils down to, because I just recently read a really great quote when it said something in the lines of, when you think economy is so much more than important than environment, then try to count your money holding your breath.
Yeah.
Right. So I think this is exactly what it is. If you think you can do without clean air and clean water and with a few degrees more on this world, well, that's great. But I don't think this is realistic. We cannot all evacuate to Mars. And also, I don't want to, honestly. Like, I like our planet way too much to even think about it. Like, all the rich and people that don't care can all go to Mars if they want to, but then they should leave now, honestly.
We're still working on that capability.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I think so. Carbon emission is definitely one thing, and what makes me so angry is that we are living in a time where we have the answers. So there is really no more reason to talk. Actions need to be taken. So there is not another meeting necessary to establish that we are in big trouble and things need to happen. And every country on this earth needs to do their part in their own means. And if you're looking at the US, I mean, the US prides itself to be one of the most advanced countries, but I think then they also should take a leadership role. It cannot be that China nowadays is more environmental friendly than the US, for example, in my opinion. But I'm not a US citizen, so I mean, this is up to you guys to decide how you're playing your part.
That is a heck of a statement, and quite honestly, something that we all have to think about and recognize. That almost deserves a pause point. Yeah, well, I mean, it's serious because it is true in so many areas, and it's something that, I come from the defense world, and it's something we talk about a lot, believe it or not, is the environmental differences in the different nations, because it starts to become a defense problem. The ripple effect of all of these impacts, yes, immediately you're seeing it, and obviously with marine life, but I think a lot of people don't realize that it affects all these other pieces as well.
Yeah, and I think that kind of leads me to another point. So ocean health is definitely one big thing. So we don't know enough about our oceans, so we need to do more science there for sure. But we also need to make sure that what we've got is protected. And the big issue with the ocean is that the majority of the ocean doesn't belong to just one single country, right? So
Right.
we need a global effort to protect the international waters, and it needs to stop that everybody just feels they can do whatever they want with those international waters. You know, you can dump your stuff there if you feel the need to do so. You can just go and fish everything empty if you feel the need to do it. I think none of that should happen anymore. And then the last point, I think, is we need to really teach our children to the scientific method. I understand that not every child will love math and will love chemistry and love physics, but I think everybody should understand how science works, the scientific method, right? That we don't just wake up one morning and say, well, Eureka, this is, I think, what's happening, but there's a very rigorous process, you know, and, you know, all those theories about, you know, who is influencing whom. I mean, it's just so mind-boggling as somebody. I mean, first of all, most of us scientists are underpaid, so we wish there would be some big pharma industry that would give us millions of dollars. But the reality is just it's not that. We don't even get money to review other people's science, right? So
Right.
when you publish in a scientific journal, other scientists anonymously look at your science and make sure that what you did is following the right method. And yes, we don't get money to actually do those reviews, but all of that has been published has been reviewed. So this is, you know, but a lot of people don't seem to know about any of that,
Yeah.
and that it just gives this a sign for me that this is not taught in school, and I think that really needs to change, so that our kids, you know how to critically think, that they, I don't know, read something and they know kind of to look at it from a critical standpoint, and then go back and look at sources that they know that they can trust to fact check pretty much everything they are coming across, right? So we don't have so much misinformation around, because that is, at this point in history that we're standing at right now, this is really, yeah, it's absolutely detrimental to the overall effort.
Yeah, I like to say perception colors reality, data clarifies it. And we need to work from a truth point, which is not a perception or belief or preference, but is actually based on facts and data that we can show. And then what people do with that, that then can be a self-determined point, unless it causes harm to others, whether that be marine life or directly to humans. I think one of the points that, from my perspective as a psychologist, I see happening, and this is pretty pervasive across the board, whether we're talking about financial choices, healthcare choices, or choices to help the environment. But I'm curious on your position on this, and that is that we have a human factor. So even if we know these are the 5 things we need to do, if I never use another plastic straw, the odds that I will see personally an impact is very low. And so each individual human, because we don't see that immediate impact, it is harder for us to sometimes follow some of those rules and recommendations. I think people struggle to imagine a 30-year impact. They even struggle to imagine sometimes a 6-month impact. So the question to you, and this is somewhat of a translation concept, what are some of those things that we could look at that would give people a right here, right now, tangible understanding? Obviously, your video is certainly one of them, right? That was immediately digestible, comprehensible, and also offensive, which, you know, pushed people to make changes, right? And inspired them. So what are some of those inspiration points that we might look for?
Yeah, I think this is one question that I've probably, well, contemplated more than once, because I think the issue really is, and I think the new generation more than even the older generation, delayed gratification, right? That's a concept that is really difficult, even for me. I mean, I have to admit that it's sometimes very difficult to motivate yourself if you just think about that it's not happening tomorrow, maybe not even, you know, the day after tomorrow. I think what motivates me though is that I can see that I'm not by myself. So, you know, rather than seeing maybe the immediate result of the action, I can see, however, that maybe I or somebody in my circle of influence has been influencing other people, right? So maybe I will make such a big impact. I would like to think otherwise, if I'm just going to be the only one that's not using straws anymore or like not use single-use plastics anymore, but maybe somebody has been watching me doing it and actually understood of why I do it and does the same thing. So I think about it more like a snowball effect.
Yes.
And just in the past 4 years, I mean, it has been incredible how much has changed just in, I mean, that's kind of the point I'm standing at in the sense of plastic. So nobody has talked about plastic 4 years ago.
No.
Now we have the UN that talks about it. They have a whole committee that is just dedicated to plastic pollution. We have so many countries that are, taking actions against single-use plastics. And, even though maybe I cannot yet see the difference when I go onto my beach and see how much plastic is still there. But I know already that there is so much more actions that are being taken and people are so much more aware. And I think this is more so than maybe the immediate thing. I don't think that you will find it. And I think we just need to train people to understand that sometimes you will not get instant gratification. But if you want to live on this planet and raise your children here, if you don't do it for yourself, fine, but do it for your children.
Right.
This is something that I don't understand. I don't even have children. And for me, it's just a logical concept because even I might still be around, in 30 or 60 years. And I will be affected by climate change and other things.
Yes.
So
yeah, we're definitely seeing changes, and the struggle is that we have to get to a culture change perspective, right? We have to really change the way we approach the earth. We were at the Nature Center in Delaware yesterday, and there was this quote, and I'm not going to get the exact quote right, but essentially the point was that we have continued to see the earth and our water space as a commodity that we own and that we can do anything we want with it. If we were to change our perspective to see it as we are the guests on this space, that we could learn to think also the way we approach it differently. And it was a great quote, and it was a good concept. It was, how do we really change the mindset so that we can improve the outcome? But one, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think, I mean, this is kind of, the economics approach. I think in conservation that exists a lot of times for ecosystem services, that what we call it, clean water, clean air, pollinators even. So if companies, for example, that are using all of those things actually would have to pay for it, they would probably treat it a little bit better.
Oh, yes.
Right? So for example, also, if, everybody argues, yeah, well, we can't get away from plastic because it's so cheap to make plastic. It's like, but is it really that cheap once it ends up in our environment and also, even in our urban system? It clogs drains and other things. Nobody talks about the cost that, the end life, which isn't really thought through, plastic causes. So I think a lot of times, we just, we gave it away for free, and now it's very difficult to all of a sudden put a stop to that and put actually monetary value on it. But I think we have to.
Yeah.
We honestly have to do that.
So that's something actually that we do in government quite frequently, is that we put a ripple effect cost impact together. And I had never thought of it like that conceptually, but it would be interesting to track. Great. So this is the first cost, but then this is the cost that it has on the environment, and actually track that outward to see what the total realistic, holistic cost is.
Yes.
We might have a very different number.
For sure, absolutely. But I mean, nobody wants to talk about it, so it will be had quiet. But if you would talk to municipalities, how much money will be put into certain cleanup processes,
right.
And I don't even know, probably things I don't even know about. Honestly, I mean, I have heard that those, what they call, like, those wet towels, for example, that like clog the drains,
yes.
in the sewage. There are millions of dollars that are put into that to clean it up, and nobody talks about it, So I think it would change perspectives, but I think there's big lobbying. There's a big lobby for certain things, and I think unless that changes, and other things are more important than business and money, I think,
Well, that's why us scientists have to speak up. And we have to keep speaking up and keep speaking up. And I think the challenge sometimes, so one of the things I found oftentimes in government was that I had to change the words that I used, or I had to put a dollar figure to it, or I had to clarify how this had an impact on other things people cared about. And then we would win our argument, but I had to package information in a way I wasn't used to. So it was very good lessons that I learned, but nonetheless, not something they teach you in a PhD program, right? We are so focused on how we get that tenure and how it is that we get those publications out to ensure that we get the credit for the work that we're doing and the level of thought we're having. So I'll share with you the word that we often use. We call ourselves thought leaders because we said, well, we're a form of leader, but we're a very specific form of leader. And it's not, we're not real good cheerleaders on stage, and we're not really good at a variety of things. But what we are good at is coming up with these ideas that we hope will spread. One of the ideas that was shared with us in South Carolina at the aquarium is they actually have an app where you can geotag a piece of plastic that you find and see either where it's come from or where it traverses. And they're collecting the data open source in hopes that other scientists will come in and aggregate it, pull it down, and help to understand. Do you know of any other apps or things that allow people to really understand what is my impact on this space? Because that's one of the ways I think we help it be an immediate concept for people.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Open Litter Map, I think. Well, that's one good approach. I know that there was, and I forgot the name of it, there was another app where you could call out certain companies, actually. So every time you found, I'm just going to say, like a Coca-Cola bottle cap, for example, because that's literally what we find the most in Costa Rica on our beaches. So products, PET bottles, bottle caps made by those companies, you could actually call them out, or Nestle, or any of the other big polluters. And and I think with this app, you could immediately send a letter to the company as well, complaining of why you found this item somewhere in the environment with a photo or something. So yeah, I mean, there's things that are a little bit more immediate. I know that there were several apps actually where you can check your own carbon footprint.
Yeah, that would be very interesting.
The WWF, I think, had one, and I can definitely look it up and send you some links if I find it again, where you can just kind of answer some questions about your lifestyle, and then it spits out the final score. And yeah, I mean, one of the big things, and I think that is whatever. I mean, I think the beauty of a lot of problems, I really believe that we as consumers can change a lot because we vote with our money. So I really do not like to think about that I'm not having any power, because I do spend money, right? Even if it's not that much, but I do spend money, and everybody does spend money. And depending on where we're spending our money, since we are living in an economy, in a capitalistic country, nobody will produce anything that nobody is buying, right? So that means if you don't buy it, it will hopefully cease to exist. And so I'm always trying to encourage people to, support companies that actually either have a good product that is sustainable and also give back something. There's so many companies nowadays that really, I think, feel the need to also give something back rather than just make money no matter what. And I think that's the one thing. And if you would go, for example, to the WWF app, I think diet will very, very quickly become your focus, because depending on what you eat, you also have a huge impact on emissions. So I don't know if you've ever watched like movies like, for example, Cowspiracy, or I think that's one of the bigger ones. Red meats, and especially cows, are detrimental for our environment and especially for our climate. So, and I know that, being a radical vegan or vegetarian is definitely not the solution for most of the people. But if you just think about maybe having, 50%, a reduction of 50% of your meat consumption or dairy consumption, I think if everyone would do that, that would have an incredible impact. And I don't know if you're familiar, but the Lancet just published a pretty interesting report together with a committee in January. It's called EAT, so just like
EAT,
3 capital letters,
okay.
EAT, EAT. And they have also, pretty much taken or like, well, employed scientists that were evaluating diet and how diet is affecting our environment, our climate, and have come up with this huge report and also suggestions of how we can alter our
Wow.
diet in order to help our environment. So I encouraged to look into that, because they do not necessarily even say, there is, first of all, the one recipe that works for every country, because I mean, we all know every country has different,
Right.
availabilities as well of what's grown and available, and also dietary restrictions, maybe because of religions and other things. But I mean, the general rules and suggestions, I think, apply for everyone, and everybody could, build their own thing. And they have, they have just this great report. So I think that's a good starting point as well, to think about your own carbon emission and how you're affecting it with your diet and your lifestyle.
Yeah, well, and that's a beautiful crossover. So this month we're really focused on the environment, but next month we're going into healthcare, and so this is a really nice bridge. I have almost this vision as you're running through these ideas, and what I'm concerned about is the separateness of them. But my older children, they're very into fitness and running, right? And so they have all these apps on their wristband that they can control how their exact workouts go and how their eating habits are, and everything is really optimized. And I almost imagine having that exact same thing for the environment and healthcare, just wrap it all together so people can understand, this is my impact, which causes this ripple effect, which
But
I
you know
can
what?
control.
It all fits together, because
Yes.
people, and I mean, it's just in the past years we have come to realize how important diet is to our
Yes.
overall health.
Yes.
So how our gut microbiome is actually responsible for autoimmune diseases, allergies, mental health problems, cancers, and all of that.
Yep.
And if we, of course, eating pesticides and other things that are not good for the environment, they're also not good for us. And if you go back to plastics, then we have to talk about microplastics that
Yes.
everybody is consuming already. Every single person that has been checked had plastic in their feces. And especially when we talk about micro and nanoplastics, they are so small. They're usually kind of considered smaller than 130 micrometers. They are able to enter our tissues, and we are in the very beginning of even starting to study the effects, but I'm almost certain that we will have results that show, yes, they are linked to cancer, yes, they are linked to like
Yeah.
mental health issues, yes, they're linked to everything else that I've just talked about. So it's everything is connected. And I don't think that you can, always take just one thing out of context, that it's not working. It's really, a healthy environment also means happy and healthy humans, because we're consuming, or consume things from that environment as well. We just tend to forget that,
I
because we're getting told a pill can fix everything, and we are not depending on clean air and clean water. And some kids don't even know that tomatoes grow somewhere, and that the milk comes from a cow, that you
oh
don't
my.
just like magically buy it in the grocery. No, I'm not joking. I've met kids
I
like
I
that.
I know that's what makes me so sad, is that it isn't, and the point at which we don't know those basics. That's when we, of course, now we're dipping into the education system, right? That is a failure on our education system, to not be able to inform our people of these actualities, and instead kind of working around them. I just can't agree with you any stronger on the holistic piece. I hope that I keep saying the word of the decade is ecosystem. Everything is connected to everything else. And although that is not a familiar term to everyone, it's one I hope becomes a familiar term. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about the ocean's ecosystem or the human ecosystem, it is all together. We just published a book on the education ecosystem, and we're talking about the cyber ecosystem, but in reality, it all has an impact, on one another. So we have to approach it together. Last final thoughts. If you could leave us with something, let's go with something positive. What would you like us to hear and remember today?
Yeah, just remember, I think, the interconnectedness. that our actions matter really every day of our life. We wake up and we make choices, and our choices matter, I think. And that is something that I want people to really realize, that no matter how small, the last drop can still make a whole pot go over its stuff. Sorry, my English word terminology for that. But yeah, no, I think everything matters, and our choices matter, and I think that is what I want to have everybody pretty clear.
I
Yeah.
love that. Everyone matters. That is certainly a message we can all remember and can resonate with us. Thank you so very much for meeting with us. I appreciate it
No
tremendously.
problem.
You are a wealth of knowledge and an inspiration.
Thank
So
you.
thank you. And thank you also just personally from a science perspective. I know you do some work with inspiring young people to become scientists. And I looked some of that up. And thank you for sharing, because we girls have to stick together.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I definitely want to encourage, especially young, young girls to really think beyond what they see usually. It's not all white males. It's just not.
No, no,
So,
I agree.
yeah.
Well, someone asked me the other day, how are you doing? Are you having a good time? I said, this is the ultimate nerd journey, what I'm going on and talking to all these great people. So thank you for being part of it.
No, thank you for having me. It was really great.
All right, till next time. See you. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.